right. Hey, this is Phil Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. I had to get my camera and everything straight. So, anyway, hey, how's everybody doing this evening? I thought I would come in and do a broadcast. And of course, today's edition is going to be the September. Now, what am I saying? September? It's not September. It is February the 21st. 1902 going to be my first in actually the first thing I'm going to talk about. But today is the September 21st, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. And when I said September, did anybody catch that? So anyway, now that I have your attention, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of talk. I usually wait about 1 minute for some people to join in. Just remember, this is Phil Dixon. I'm kind of wearing my ABCs, Indianapolis ABCs jersey tonight. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some historic things. And once again, as I said, we're going to start off with February 21st, 1902. And, I was doing some research and I thought this was kind of interesting. And it said that the Bible has baseball in it, believe it or not. And I thought it was kind of interesting. They said that Eve stole first, like stole first. And then they say Adam got put out of the Garden of Eden. Yeah, put out. See, first one stole and then put out. And then it says David struck out Goliath. And then it said the prodigal son made a home run. I guess you kind of figure that out. And it said that Moses shut out the Egyptians at the Red Sea. So they use baseball terms and mention it with some Bible facts, and they try to convince everybody that baseball was in the Bible. So anyway, guys, I do want to thank everybody who's joining me today, and I'm just trying to do what I do here, and that's bring you African American baseball history through the ages, and lots of interesting things have happened. And so, without further ado, we're going to start right off. Okay, so February 21st, 1902, playing high school hockey for Central High School against Minneapolis High School, Bobby Marshall, a future St. Paul Gopher, and that's St. Paul Gophers, the baseball team, lost by a 6-1 score. Okay, Marshall made the single goal for his team. So Bobby Marshall played baseball, he played football, and did you know he played hockey? Yeah, so you have black people playing hockey. This is 1902, and this is history that was never shared with us, but you're learning it here, and that's the most important thing. So that's Bobby Marshall, and you can go look up Bobby Marshall. He was an outstanding athlete, especially in football. And of course, I remember he played in the 1909 series against the Chicago Cubs as a member of the Leland Giants because he came from the St. Paul Gophers and became a fill-in with the Leland Giants, right? So that is Bobby Marshall. Okay, let's go to another one. February 21st, 1908. The National League of Colored Baseball is organized with the following officers. Conrad Kubler of St. Louis was elected the president. Edward S. Gilliard of Indianapolis, the secretary, and Charles D. Marshall of Indianapolis, the corresponding secretary. Now, this is 1908, and this is one of the things that makes the 1920 organization of the Negro National League so important because there were other efforts to organize leagues and it did not work out. So in 1908, the teams that had signed for this new league that never got a chance to form, they were from St. Louis. So that was probably St. Louis Giants. Then they had a team in Cincinnati. I'm not sure who the Cincinnati team was. They had one from Cleveland. Of course, they had the Louisville. I know that was the Louisville Giants. And then they had one from Springfield, Ohio. And then they had another one from Nashville and one from Columbus, Ohio. So they were pretty spread out. But there was an effort made, and they even got as far as nominating a president, a secretary, and a corresponding secretary, but they never got off the ground. So that is baseball history. And once again, that's why organizing of the Negro National League in 1920 is so very important. All right. And when you look at all these efforts in the past, it really makes it come home as far as why we need to recognize that 1920 effort. All right, how about this? February 21st, 1909. And this is some winter ball baseball action. It was a team called the Hubert Giants. This in 1909. And they crushed the Buman team of the Boyle Heights Diamond area there by a score of 23-9. And I don't know how much you know about Boyle Heights. Boyle Heights was the area that was pretty well segregated out there in Los Angeles. There was a great gangster who came from Boyle Heights. I'm trying to think of his name. I have it. I have a book by him in the back here. I'm trying to think of his name. Somebody know that gangster's name from Boyle Heights? Mickey Cohen. That was his name. You ever heard of Mickey Cohen? Yeah, he was all involved in boxing. He even tried to be a boxer. Mickey Cohen. He came from Boyle Heights. Started off as a newsboy, and he was one of the most powerful figures in the underworld out in Los Angeles, and from Boyle Heights. All right, so let's go here. We're going to jump up to, let's go to February 21st, 1925. And how about this? Although they were the only team to have more than one extra base hit, with George Carr and Connie Day with triples, and Lemuel Hawkins and a guy named Ward with doubles, the Los Angeles White Sox lost a 4-3 game to the White King Soap Company to open a 5-game Winter League Championship series at the baseball park on 38th Street and Hooper. And and there was a guy named Odie, O-T-E Crandall, and let's see, Crandall and Clifford Bale, who had played, actually, he was from Kildare, Texas, had played with the Kansas City Monarchs at this particular point. He would end up with the Memphis Red Sox and some other teams, but he was out on the West Coast, and they both tossed 8 hitters trying to beat each other. And a guy by the name is Johnny McAuley, McAuley, hit a home run, and that was the Suds Soap team, only extra base hit, and it decided the game. Now, Odie Campbell played for, is a pitcher, the New York Giants, the St. Louis Terriers of the Federal League, the St. Louis Browns, 1916, the Boston Braves, and he was one of the first players to be consistently used as a relief pitcher, and he earned the nickname Doc. So most people know him as Doc Crandall. And interesting thing about it, the nickname came from a guy who was named Damon Runyon. Let me get a drink of water here. And he called Crandall Doc, he said, because he was a physician of pitching emergency. Now, if you know anything about Damon Runyon, he is also the person that gave Ted Ratcliffe his nickname, Double Duty. And Double Duty told me that personally, that he played pitcher and catcher in a doubleheader. And Runyon was there and watched the game. And the next day he came out and he said, this guy was doing double duty. And his name is Ted Ratcliffe. And from that day forward, he became Ted Double Duty Ratcliffe. Yeah. Had a great honor of interviewing Ted Ratcliffe. Interesting guy. So I don't know if you ever have had a chance to look at some of the things that have been talked about on Ratcliffe, but yeah, he lived to be over 100, excuse me, years old. So that was Ted Double Duty Ratcliffe out of Chicago, Illinois, originally born in Mobile, Alabama. Some good ball players came out of Mobile, Alabama, including a guy by the name of Leroy Satchel Paige, right? So let's keep it going here. And guys, if you like what I'm doing here, by all means, go ahead and subscribe. The other thing you can do is share this broadcast. Let people know what we're doing here. And I come on and I'm here basically almost every day in one way or the other. I'm going to do some interesting things coming up this week. I'm trying to record several broadcasts on some player features that I want to share with you this coming week. One of them will be a guy by the name of Roy Dorsey. And I'm sure you don't know anything about Roy Dorsey, but I'm going to make sure that you do. All right. So that is that baseball feat there. So let's go two more, and then we are out of here. Let me fix my computer here so I can get all of this so we can see it here. Yeah. So hope everybody's doing fine this evening. Okay, almost finished here. Okay, so this is February 21st, 1938. So we jumped from 1925 to 1938, February 21st. In a game sponsored by the local Kiwanis Club at Memorial Gym, the New York Renaissance team defeated the Firestones by a 53-42 score. And Clarence Fetch Jenkins scored 12 points to tie for his team lead in scoring. Of course, the local newspaper said Captain Fetch Jenkins' floor work and basket eye enabled his team to stay in front during the first half of the Wrens, the first half, as the Wrens star sank 5 baskets in this period, despite a frantic effort by Whitlinger, former Ohio State star, to stop him. And at this particular time in 1938, Jenkins was considered the Babe Ruth of basketball. So you know what that means, the Babe Ruth of basketball. Have you ever heard of Fats Jenkins? Now we all know about Michael Jordan, and maybe you know about Reese Goose Tatum, maybe Ted Strong. But the greatest of all these players, the guy that really put people in the ballpark early on or in the bleachers for basketball, was a guy named Clarence Fetch Jenkins. And today, I always love to say this, he is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame. That is the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame in Springfield, Illinois. Springfield, Massachusetts, not Illinois. I've been to Springfield, Illinois, but Springfield, Massachusetts, which I have not been there yet, which I hope to go there and see this exhibit that they have there, honoring all of these basketball players who were baseball players as well. I have one more, and I'm going to jump through this one. You might find this one interesting. February 21st, 1989. So this is the big jump. So Brian Jeffrey Giles, an infielder, is signed as a free agent by the American League Cleveland Indians. And he is the grandson of George Giles, who I also interviewed. I interviewed Brian as well. A Kansas City Monarchs, St. Louis Stars, Gilchrist Union Giants, Brooklyn Eagles, and Homestead Grays first baseman from the 1920s and 1930s. That was George Giles, his grandfather. And so, interesting thing, in my collection, I have an article that appeared in the Jet magazine. You probably remember Jet magazine. Did you ever get the Jet magazine? I know as a kid growing up, most every black family you went to, they had two magazines for sure, and it would be the Ebony and Jet magazine. So almost every house I went into, if they had a magazine subscription, it was going to be to one or both of those magazines. And so I always wanted to get myself and a mention in one of those magazines. So finally, I did get a mention, actually twice, in the Jet. I don't think I ever made Ebony, but I definitely made Jet magazine at least twice. And there's a picture, and I have somewhere in my collection where Brian is holding a baseball card from my 1987 Negro League baseball greats. It was a set that I put out in 1987 that featured his grandfather, George Giles, and he's holding the card up saying, "This is my favorite baseball card." And that was my mention of getting into Jet magazine. And as a kid, uh, there were several magazines that I wanted to be in. The other one was Sports Illustrated. I used to have that subscription to Sports Illustrated, and in the back, they would have that section where they were talking about kind of like youth sports, and they would give recognition to baseball players and kids who were doing other sports. And I never could get that section, but I dreamed of one day being in the Sports Illustrated. And finally, in I think it was 89, Pete Gammons came out, and they were doing a feature on Ewan Kaufman about the Caravan. that the Royals had that covered about 4 states. And I was the one who put the caravan together during that period. And so I would actually serve as driver for the players. And so I was put the caravan together, and then I would serve as a driver, and we'd hit all these spots, generally going to radio stations. And then we would just stay out there for 2 or 3 days. And then I would come back, and the next week I would get a couple other players. So this was generally end of January, right up until spring training. And we would hit places like we go out Forest West, we go out to Wichita, and then we drop down around Pittsburgh, Kansas, in that area. And then we would go up to Missouri, up to St. Joe, and we would go into Bethany, Missouri. Where else we go? We went all the way up in Missouri. And then the other direction, we would go down Columbia, Missouri, Boonville, different areas. So we hit all of these places. Actually, I kept my lineup from 1 year with the caravan. But anyway, Pete Gammons, I don't know if you remember Pete. He wrote a column for Sports Illustrated at that time. Later on, he was big time with ESPN, but he came out and he was with us, and they sent a photographer from Sports Illustrated, and he was with us for 3 days. And on that particular trip, I had Frank White and Gerald Perry. You remember Gerald Perry? He came to the Royals from the Atlanta Braves, and Gerald was with us. And so we drove, and they wrote the story. Pete Gammons wrote the story, and in there he talked about how many things we would do and what we would in one day. So like we would hit a breakfast. Actually, we would do a breakfast in the morning, and then we do a school about midday, and then we do a luncheon, and then we come back and do a school in the afternoon, and then sometime we would even do a banquet thing in the evening. So we might do 5 or 6 appearances in one day, and it'd be autograph signings. And this is the way that the Royals built their network. And I was happy to be a part of that. And I was there during the time that they had the largest attendance. I think it was 1989, if I'm correct. And that was the largest attendance that they had until the Royals were back in the World Series, and I think maybe 2016, 2017, 2018, somewhere in there, they surpassed that record that we had set in 1989. And we almost hit 3 million people. And so they finally did hit 3 million. And so my record went down the tubes, but nevertheless, I was there and a part of it, and part of the caravan. And that's how my name ended up in Sports Illustrated. And guys, I'm so proud to have my name in Sports Illustrated. That's when Sports Illustrated was still a real magazine with a real following. And magazines are really falling off. Sports magazine. I don't know if I ever made the sporting news, but I definitely made Sports Illustrated and the Jet magazine, and a few others too. So anyway, that's it for me tonight. I do want to thank everybody for joining. And if you're picking this broadcast up later, which will probably be the case, make sure to share the broadcast, guys, and highlight some of these players that I talked about tonight. There were some good names that I mentioned. Of course, Clarence Fetch Jenkins and Brian Giles was another one, and Lemuel Hawkins and Connie Day. That's one I don't mention too often. George Carr, he gets lots of mentions. And even these owners, Conrad Kubler, Kuber, Keuber. I think that's how you pronounce that. And of course, I have talked about Bobby Marshall on many occasions, especially during football season. This guy was an incredible football player. So I've had a chance to talk about him quite a bit. So do want to thank you for joining, and we'll be back tomorrow. And this coming week, we're going to have some interesting features on some athletes. And so I just want to thank everybody who's been in support of this broadcast. And if you're not able to catch me live, by all means, when you're going to bed, you can put this broadcast on. And the other thing is, right now it's commercial free. So, and if there's a commercial that pops in there, let me know. I'll make sure that I do something about that. So Anyway, this is Phil Dixon, and this has been another day of this day in Black baseball history. This is the February 21st, not September, but the February 21st, 2026 edition of this ongoing conversation that never stops. Thank you guys, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Bye. I'm trying to end my broadcast. There you go.